Your nervous system is creating your reality. This is a new curriculum, my friends. This is what should have been taught in school. This what is should be being taught in school. Just imagine in future generations, we're actually sitting children down and talking about the crux of nervous system dynamics, how reality is actually formed and created from the intimate connection of what is happening within the individual and what they see. Now, this can be a really daunting and drastic realization when we start to understand just how intimately we are connected to our reality. The world out there, the universe is just actually responding to how we feel, and it's our nervous system which determines how we feel. And it's from our past and our evolutionary development of our whole identity creation, which then forms how we are, how we feel, our beliefs, our thoughts, our words, our actions, but then ultimately what we experience in the external world. It's from that deep root of subjectivity which influences what we experience out there. This is when we start to understand what we feel at our deepest. Now, we have different levels of thinking and thought as well. We have objective thought, which is surface level, and then we have subjective thinking. And subjective thinking is very much influenced by our root frequency, emotion, and vibration. And they are almost synonymous of each other. It's really important to think of it like that. Because if we work with an emotion, let's say we're predominantly engulfed by the fear response, we're in a deep state of dysregulation, we're extremely reactive to what is happening. It's that root which then creates and attracts in all the thoughts that are associated with that frequency and vibration. So when we start to release from a deep level within our nervous system of that, we start to go into a deeper state of regulation. So we're going into from discord to accord and harmony. We start to understand the difference, the contrast between fear and love, and joy and harmony and peace and bliss. Yeah. But we have to let go of that root emotion, which is very much influenced by our past. Our nervous system is evolved and developed from as soon as we come out the birth canal all the way. It is gathering data and impressions along the way, which then is stored within our nervous system. And then also synonymous to that is it's stored within our body. So then we start to work with the body, we start to work with the subconscious, we start to work with all these impressions which are happening within us and acting out autonomously and then being reflected into the external world. And we start to work with that. We let go. We start to resolve that felt sense experience of what we could label as the emotion of fear. And then we start to let go of everything else that's associated with that, which then helps us go up the scale. And this is where we can talk about the map of consciousness, which is absolutely is so relevant to what I'm talking about now. We start to transcend and evolve our identity away from this survival paradigm. And so the survival paradigm is very much an individual and collective state of deep nervous system dysregulation. It's created a paradigm. It's created what we feel to be true, but when really it is actually falsehood prevailing at large. And that, my friends, is can be a very daunting prospect to go to work on this. That's why it's really important to have an expanded context, but then to narrow it down within the day to day dynamics of your nervous system. It's really important to become aware of when you are dysregulated and when you are regulated. It's really important to have a felt sense experience of where you understand deeply of how to navigate out of that and release the emotions that are associated with the survival paradigm. So we start to move, we start to evolve, we start to impress different different felt sense experience inwardly, which is then expressed into our external world. And I said a moment ago about how we can have fun with this. We can actually consciously put ourselves into a state of dysregulation. I recommend this very, 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 very lightly and playfully. You can ebb and flow between it. You can actually put yourself in it. And it's really beneficial to do this because you can start to see how the nuances of how reality changes in your favor or against your favor. And it's this journey of frustration and forgiveness. We see this happening. We ebb and flow between frustration and forgiveness, expansion and contraction. But the more aware we become, the easier, and the more we break through this deconditioning that we've gathered over time, the easier it comes to just to be able to navigate reality in general. We start to go from predominantly a dysregulated state to a predominantly regulated state. And it's through that process that our life starts to change. Our identity starts to evolve. We start to really see how drastically and radically the external world can change due to our state. We can just all of a sudden relationships can shift, and I'm sure you've experienced this at large. And this is when we start to see big shifts going on out there. This is our nervous system recalibrating what is happening within us. And it appears to be, this seems to be like an autonomous, spontaneous process, which can create rather bombastic things happening within our lives. It's when we evolve through, we need to evolve through certain things, and it's all a learning process. We start to really understand from the power of contrast. We're actually here to understand the difference between a dysregulated nervous system and a regulated nervous system, just so we can understand the chronic levels of difference between fear and love. We need to understand, from what I see, this duality, dual like infrastructure that we have is to learn this extreme contrast. Because if we didn't know hate and fear and everything that comes from that, how do we know what love is? How do we know what peace is? How do we know what bliss is? We've come in here to almost learn from that deep degree of contrast. And I'm sure you've experienced that in your own life as well. You've experienced that deep contrast. And I always talk about the divine design of your life. And we all have these really kind of like beautiful blueprint imprints that we have to play out when we have to learn from. And each of us is learning about contrast and duality, but it's in our own very special way. And it appears to be the stronger the soul, the more cataclysmic the events may seem to be. We may be in extremely dysfunctional relationships. We may have twin flame stuff going on. I know I've definitely experienced that. We may have jobs that we need to navigate through, not just relationships from a spouse or lover. It could be friendships. It could be people that we meet in the street. It could be the person at the gym. It could be the person at the shop. It could be the person we see every day that we don't know their name. But there's this engagement of what we have to go through for us to increase our awareness of what's happening within us. The more we become aware of what's happening within us, and it becomes more and more nuanced, so subtle, it becomes so subtle, the changes and shifts. And from my personal journey, I've actually seen things just change in an instant just due to something, the felt sense experience shifting within my inner dynamics from my nervous system, that energetic frequency vibration, a loosening of what's happening within. You can feel frequencies changing, and just you can imagine a radio wave and just kind of increasing, going up one notch. So you're now dialed into a whole different radio station. So you only got a whole new things going in. There's new thoughts, feelings, beliefs all happening. But understanding your nervous system, understanding that the ebb and flow of where you are is all coming from within. And nervous system work and nervous system understanding and dynamics is a really powerful model to help us navigate and understand this. When it comes to, say, the map of consciousness, and I have a archetype model as well of like different identity archetypes that we're evolving through. It really helps us understand what's occurring in our lives and why it's all unfolding the way that it is. Because we want to go more and more into a state of empowerment. And we only really go into a true state of empowerment when we understand that everything is occurring because of what's happening within inside us. It's okay to have a teacher. It's okay to have people that influence you. But there's a really poignant quote which says, "Don't mistake the finger pointed at the moon for the moon itself." And that's very relevant for now. Even I'm telling you all this stuff now, and I don't want you to. I don't want you to completely understand or like take what I'm saying as true. I want you to subjectively experience it. That's the real key. That's the key. So the whatever I talk about here, whatever videos you watch, whatever things that you listen to, whatever information you're absorbing right now, just remember it's all pointing you deeper into you. That's so important. It's pointing you deeper into yourself, because the more you go into yourself, the more you'll realize that you change what's going on within. And there's lots of different ways to do that. I'll explore that in other videos. Most definitely. Breath work is definitely one of them, without a doubt. I facilitate people in that. And I've seen incredible things happen and shift literally just like that. So, my friends, I'm really interested to know where you are in your journey when it comes to navigating nervous system dynamics, your nervous system, your subjective state, your states of different forms of regulation, dysregulation. What are you observing? How is the world? What is the world reflecting back at you, which is showing these deeper facets and elements of yourself? Let me know in the comments. I would love to hear. So, my friends, sending you so much love on your journey. I'm going to sign out now, and I cannot wait to see you already in the next video.